Hey everyone, welcome back to the Let's Talk podcast with me and David, aka Shamrock Balls. And we decided to do something a little bit different this time. Been doing this for almost a year, and we decided, this will be the first time we ever do our own list kind of show. And we're going to do the top 5 scores of all time. Well, 5 from me and 5 from David. The way I wanted to start this show is actually ask you something, David, because I thought about this pretty recently. You brought up the fact that most of your favorite movies all have great scores. And I'm thinking about that, and that's entirely true with me too. And why is that, you think?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know why that is. Is it just because that's what makes them partly great movies? Is because they have great scores, you know? But I mean, over the years, there's also been great movies that have really good soundtracks, but they're not overly scored, and they're maybe just have really good atmosphere and things like that. Heat springs to mind, which is another. There's a really good soundtrack, but I wouldn't say it's overly scored.
No, I completely agree with that. There's different levels to it, and actually one person who I wanted to put on my list, just a little bit of a spoiler, that didn't make it was Hans Zimmer, and that's because a lot of his scores more recently very different from like his late 80s, early 90s stuff where he used the synthesizer, but now they're more like noises and building atmosphere, especially when he's working with Nolan and in Dune. It's not really something that you can go out of your way and listen to.
Yeah, I actually think that now we have started to move away from real big orchestral scoring, and we have kind of moved more into this kind of noises and stuff like that just for mood. Some of it's very hard to listen to. I could be wrong. Maybe somebody can tell me other ways, but that's exactly how I find it.
No, that's exactly how I feel about it too. Is that's just we've definitely shifted. It's not many composers out there doing like these big, like you said, orchestral scores. Like I think like Michael Giacchino a couple of years ago with the Batman. That was one I can keep listening to over and over, and that didn't even get an Academy Award nomination, which is crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. And I wanted to ask you as well, John, when we were going to do this, is that when did you kind of first discover that you were a lover of film music? Because obviously that's a very different medium than just loving movies. And what was the first ever score you bought?
So for me, the first one I ever bought, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this, and it might be in my top 5. Now, I'm not going to spoil it yet, but it was the score for Batman 1989. I absolutely love that score. And it's weird because this is the rare movie that has not only a great score, but a great soundtrack from Prince. It's so strange that a movie can have both. Usually, like, when you think of like Tarantino, he has great soundtracks. Like, he compiles like these great like lists of music, but they're not scored great, his movies. So it's a different aspect. It's amazing that Batman 89 has that. It made me fall in love with a lot of Danny Elfman stuff. And I would say he was probably my first favorite composer. And then and right side by side, I didn't realize how much I liked him was John Williams. I didn't realize that was the guy because I was young doing all the same scores for all these great movies. But what was your first one?
Yeah, so that was kind of like your gateway was Danny Elfman, Batman 89, and then John Williams. Well, I mean, I think anybody that's watched our show for long enough now knows that my favorite film is Jaws, and of course it was Jaws that was the gateway for me into loving film scores and film music. And the same thing as yourself, as I've mentioned in our previous podcast, growing up in the 80s, watching movies like Superman. Wasn't a big Star Wars fan, I have to admit, when I was young. Didn't really get into Star Wars till I was older, but I knew the Star Wars theme. Did I know it was the same person, John Williams? Probably not. And I remember that when I was very young, when I eventually got like the Jaws movies on VHS, taking a recorder and putting them up to the television and recording like the opening titles and the end titles and having like a set of those themes. And then, but it was just more the Jaws theme and the ending titles. But then the more I watched the movies, the more I got invested in the other music, which was throughout the movies. And one day, I was a teenager or young teenager. I was walking through a physical media store that we have at this side of the pond, John. I don't know if you've heard of it, HMV.
I've heard of it, but I've never, been inside one. We don't have them here, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, well, they're basically back then they sold VHSs, they sold CDs, vinyl. They might have sold vinyl, but because it probably wasn't totally out yet before it came back in, And I seen this in the camera.
The Jaws 2 soundtrack. That's funny because we did have a good conversation about this when we did the Jaws 2 thing, and how you told me how much you love the Jaws 2 score and how different it is from the original one.
Yeah, that's right. So I had seen that, and I remember that I didn't have enough money for it, and my brother graciously lent me the money to get it. I think it was 13 English pounds. That was for British pounds, and that was like whenever I was mid-90s, 1994, 95. So that was the first one I got. And then, of course, once you get the first one, I eventually then had to pick up the second one, or the original. It was a couple of years later, same place again, HMV, browsing the soundtracks, and I found this.
See, that's the one I had. That was the first one that I ever got.
Yeah, and that's why I had to fast track that my story there, mate, to say that Jaws 2, Jaws, the original, Batman 89 for me, and also I had on cassette Terminator 2 Judgment Day, which was the same day I bought the Batman soundtrack, and I listened to them soundtracks over and over and over again. But I do have the cassette somewhere. I think it's boxed away in the attic. I couldn't find it for the show.
It's funny because I never actually owned the Terminator and Terminator 2 scores, because by the time I was going to go buy them, like, I pretty much kind of stopped buying CDs. It was weird. The ones I got first, it's weird that I got Batman, the 89 score, and I got Batman Forever on soundtrack around the same time, because I thought Batman Forever just had a great soundtrack. So I was a little late to the party, so I wasn't getting stuff. I was getting it kind of out of order. And then when I really got into collecting scores and stuff, eventually my CDs got stolen, and I never started my collection over. And now I just listen to all the scores digitally on Apple Music.
Yeah, look, I started really collecting the scores more when I turned. Well, I remember kind of like, this is good off topic of scores. I remember like Pulp Fiction was a big soundtrack in the 90s, but just more music. So I collected them. I had that. I had Reservoir Dogs. I had Jackie Brown. As a matter of fact, I still have all them, John. I never get rid of them. I've kept them all as part of my soundtrack collection. But then I started going down more the road of orchestral scores, as you say, becoming a John Williams fan. Movies like E.T., Jurassic Park, The Lost World, movies like that. Then I started collecting the scores for them type of movies. I'm actually a very, very big John Williams fan.
Yeah, I know. I figured John Williams is going to make your top 5 at some point. I'm curious to see how many. I know that he's probably your favorite of all of them at this point, just based on what I know about your love of his movies.
Oh yeah. Well, John Williams will be in there. I think anybody could guess that. That he'd be in there.
Yeah. Well, let's start it off. So the way this is going to work, we'll trade just one apiece. One of us will start at the bottom, and if we double up somewhere, which we might, you never know. And if we do double up there, we'll have some honorable mentions. I think we can bring up somewhere in there.
Yes, 100%. Of course we can.
So I'm going to start off with my number 5, and this is one that I asked you to check out, and that is Amira Morricone score for Once Upon a Time in the West. I think this is his best score that he ever did. And he worked a lot with Sergio Leone and doing these spaghetti westerns. He's probably most famous for his the Good, the Bad, the Ugly score. Is famous that it transitioned just being in the movie. I mean, I saw this in Nicktoons in the 90s. Like I saw that before I ever even saw The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. I knew the dun, 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 and then the thing in the background. But I think that Once Upon a Time in the West is a much more emotional score and really lends itself great to the movie.
Yeah, I actually did listen to this today. I'd asked you, and you said you could listen to that, and yeah, very good score. I was taking the dog out and got caught in the rain and had to come back again, so I didn't get through it all. But I did recognize the tune in it, and it's really funny because I didn't realize this that was kind of remixed into a song that was in The Sopranos. Isn't that right?
You're right. I'm sure you're right. And it's weird because Morricone scores have been used in other things since he's passed away, like The Hateful Eight. uses an unused song from The Thing, which works perfectly.
Yes.
And then you realize how similar Hateful Eight is to The Thing and why Quentin Tarantino would want to use a piece of music from it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ennio Morricone, I know how legendary he is to a lot of composers and a lot of filmmakers who grew up watching spaghetti westerns and movies like that, like Tarantino, like John Carpenter. That's why they always wanted to work with him. And even when I haven't seen Once Upon a Time in the West, and to be honest, I really should check it out. So I don't really have an emotional connection to this score. Do you know what I mean, John? If I had because my love of the score comes through watching the movie first, right? So, but it's still a brilliant score. So it's one of those things I'd really need to check it out. But when I was listening to it, I could really feel the heavy influence that Tarantino has had in his movies through this score and films like Django. And first one I thought of when I put it on was The Hateful Eight. And even some of his other movies that aren't westerns.
Yeah, like a lot of the Kill Bill stuff, you realize it's not just taking from martial arts film; it takes from westerns too. And really, Tarantino wears all his inspirations on his sleeves with all his movies. Like that's why I think me and you probably agree that his first three are the best because it feels like it takes from '70s movies. I feel like,
yeah, that's right.
Whereas the other stuff they started taking from the westerns from like the '60s and early '70s, and then that's kind of like the wagon he's been riding until he got to like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Which I mean, Once Upon a Time in West, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, well, it's exactly where he got that title from, and I think as well that part of the reason why I like his first three as well is that because at least 1 and 3, first film and the third film, are more grounded. I just when it started going off a wee bit towards the fantasy element and comic bookish type of thing, it just didn't really appeal to me that much. Even though Pulp Fiction has some elements of that, it's still more grounded. Pulp Fiction is a wee bit more absurd. Absurd things happen in life. But yeah, no, it's a great score, John, and I really need to check out the film.
Yeah, I think you'll really like it. What's your number 5?
Okay, so my number 5 is Back to the Future.
I knew that this was coming. Part 3, huh?
Part 3. Yeah, I actually, that's why I waited for the pause there, because I think he would have just thought Back to the Future. Yeah, Part 3. It's just, I just think this is the best of those 3 scores. Now, I've had to write down a few wee notes here so I don't miss anything. It's still got all the adventure elements of the first 2 movies. Retains all those kind of original themes. But it also it integrates in the original, but also kind of like integrating the original themes with the Western themes.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it's just I actually had a feeling that a Back to the Future. I just assumed it was going to be 1 because I know how much you love Back to the Future. I mean, Alan Silvestri is one of the best too, and I mean the guy's he's probably most known now because of younger people because of the Avengers, but his Back to the Future stuff, it's iconic.
It is iconic, and people will, when they think about Back to the Future, they'll think of the original. They won't think of the third one. But I just feel as if like he's expanded the third movie. The score, he expands it more. He's got all these Western themes. He also a theme I love through the movie as well is the Doc and Clara love theme, because this is basically Doc's movie. So the first movie is about Marty's parents, the second movie is about Marty, and the third movie is about Doc.
I agree, and I think you and me. I mean, I know you really like Part 2, but I personally like Part 3 more than Part 2. I think Part 3, after I watched it last year, it's a great, very underrated Back to the Future film. And one thing you haven't listened to it yet, but on the rewatchals, they were talking about how people were disappointed with Part 2 at the end because it's basically a 7-month gap to the third part of the movie. But me and you, well, maybe not you, but at least for me, I was just able to just watch Part 3 immediately.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 7 months is better than, say, 3 years. Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I would have been losing. And, it's not like the social media where people just move on to the next thing. It's like they were like left there, like they could just talk to each other about it.
Yeah, I mean, they filmed those movies back to back, and that's why there's a 7-month gap, because the second movie was being edited and released while they were filming the third movie. I had actually I had the first one on VHS and I had the second one on VHS, and the third one didn't have it in VHS, but it wasn't. I mean, it mightn't have even been out yet. But the first time I seen the third one was actually on Sky Movies. I had recorded it off Sky Movies in the early '90s. But look, I have always loved Back to the Future 3, even throughout all the years when people were doubters and all saying it's the worst one, it's the crap one, it's the Western one, it's not as good as the other two. No, I always said it was a great movie. Now, there was a time where I would have said the 2 was better, but in the last load of years, I prefer 3 to 2, because 2's just a wee bit too busy for me now that I'm older, and I like more kind of the drama of the third one. And that all goes back to the score. I think the score really adds to that. For me, it's a full, expansive score with different themes and elements runs throughout it, and as I say, to set to the backdrop of like a Western theme as well. We have the dark love theme, and we still incorporate out of the first 2 movies the themes that we were already familiar with. I think it's an amazing score. I think it could even be Silvestri's best score.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna have to give 3 a re-listen. And one thing about you is that you've recommended to me, certain movies that I don't really love, and just to really listen to the score. And one of them I got to bring up on here, and that is The Lost World: Jurassic Park, which I stand by how I feel about that movie and that I don't like it. But the score, you're not wrong about. It really is a very underrated John Williams score. And I feel like Alan Silvestri, very similar here with, part 3. Many people might not even give it a try just because like they write off part 3 of the Back to the Future movies. Nowadays, people don't really talk too much. Part 2 had a little bit of a resurgence when 2015 rolled around because played in 2015. But other than that, really only the first one gets brought up nowadays.
Yeah, and the thing is, funny enough, even though we started the poll by saying, like, a lot of our favorite movies come with amazing scores, but there still is movies out there that the scores outdo the movies, as you say about The Lost World.
Yeah, John Williams has a few of these too. Like with Hook, that's a great score. I'm not a big fan of the original Superman. I don't know if that's on your list, but I love the movie in a sense, but the score is amazing.
Yeah, the score is outstanding. John Williams, everything to me, John Williams just brings an extra bit of class to whatever movies he's doing. Do you know what I mean? It's like even down to like JFK as well, great movie, but he wrote an amazing score for that as well. When he it's that the guy, I'm not saying, I was about to say he didn't have to, but the guy doesn't phone anything in. He always gives his best to whatever movie he's been given. But
a lot of people bring up 1993 and how Spielberg did Jurassic Park and Schindler's List. Williams did the score for both those movies. So, everyone, and Schindler's List won the Academy Award. I personally like the Jurassic Park theme a little bit more, and I prefer that score overall, which it didn't make my top 5 because I made a rule only one John Williams score could make my list. We'll be here all day.
Exactly. And look, do you ever hear the story Spielberg tells about getting John Williams to do the score for Schindler's List?
I might have, but refresh my memory.
Well, he basically went to John Williams and says, I need you to do the score for this movie. And John Williams thought he wasn't good enough. John Williams says, can you not get somebody else? And Spielberg apparently says to him, I would, Johnny, but they're all dead. That's how he got him. That's how he agreed to do it, because he didn't want to. He thought he wasn't good enough.
That's crazy, because I think he's the best composer of all time.
And I totally agree with you. And by the way, just while it's in my mind, I wasn't too sure which one to put at number 5, and I was nearly going to put Young Guns 2 at number 5. Again, Alan Silvestri came out the same year as Back to the Future 3. I absolutely love that score, which he done for Young Guns 2.
I know you're a big Young Guns 2 guy, and one day we're going to talk about the Young Guns movie on here. And I really like Young Guns 2 also, and great Bon Jovi theme song there, because Blaze of Glory is a classic as well.
Yeah, love Blaze of Glory, but I think that's one of those. I think that, look, I love Young Guns 2. I actually think it's better than the first one. But I do know that the reception was mixed for Young Guns 2 when it came out, and you could possibly argue that that is a movie that the score is better than the movie. But I think it just fits it perfectly, and I just think it's amazing that this guy brought out two Western scores in the same year, and they're both magnificent.
Just shows you the power of Alan Silvestri. Yeah, he's one of the greats too. And I'm going to give you my number 4, which E.T. the Extraterrestrial from 1982. I absolutely love this score. I don't think E.T. works as well without the score. There's actually been videos put online of people playing this movie without the John Williams score, and it doesn't work as well, which shows you the power of a great score in a movie and how it can do a lot of the work. And there's just so many scenes I think of in E.T., and I have the score playing in my head when I think of those scenes. And I've seen E.T. on the big screen. I've seen it on 4K. I've seen it on VHS, Blu-ray, DVD. I've seen it on everything. But the score, it's always iconic. And honestly, one of my favorite memories of being in the theater is hearing that John Williams score play.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, look, you could make a case that this is Williams' greatest work. It's certainly up there. I couldn't argue with anybody if they said it was. The testament to the man is the fact that the story that he wrote a whole part at the end of the movie, and Spielberg had already cut his movie. So then John Williams was re-editing his music to fit what Spielberg had cut together at the end of the movie, and Spielberg in the end says to him, "Don't do that. Keep your arrangement how it is. I'm actually going to recut my movie. Do your music." That's how powerful his score was for that movie. And Spielberg recut the end of E.T. to suit his score.
I'll be right here.
And he did a phenomenal job. The end of that movie and it's one of my favorite endings in film history, and a lot of that is credited to John Williams' score. I'd love E.T., so I'm wondering if I'm like slightly biased, but I'm always, one of my favorite John Williams moments is when we see the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. And part of me wants to put Jurassic Park here because I love that movie just as much, but E.T.'s score I just think is just slightly better. I mean, it's so hard to pick a favorite John Williams score. It really is.
Yeah, for me, I mean, after a certain one, it's hard for me to pick a next one down. Do you know what I mean? The next few, they can interchange, but I do feel as if it goes back to what I was saying about Back to the Future 3. I do feel as if E.T. is a more of an expansive score than, say, Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park has some great themes and some great set pieces to the visuals, but I think E.T. on the whole, from start to finish, is a better score than Jurassic Park. Entrada, have you heard of Entrada and La La Land?
Oh, La La Land, the people who put out the score. Yeah, I've heard of I've learned about La La Land.
And there's Entrada, and there's another one called, I can't even pronounce it, it's Varus Sambaye or something, Varus Sambaye. Well, I think it was Entrada brought out the expanded ET score a few years ago, and they also included the original LP version on CD, and that's what they used to do. What they used to do was there would be music composed for the film, and then what these composers would do then was they would rescore the movie, and they would release an album. So it's a concept album. So it's basically like, as I said about Jaws, that's not the original full score. That's just a concept album of re-recorded music, re-recorded for consumers just to buy and listen to. It's kind of the same with Jaws 2 as well, and it was the same with Batman. John, the same with Batman as well. That's like a re-recording and rearrangement of the original score. They're not the actual scores that were in the movie.
That's fascinating. And I kind of knew that with Batman, because when I go back and watch the movie, you can hear some of those differences.
Yeah, so what happens is that in recent times, over the last 10, 12, 15 years, whatever, some of these companies have been going into studios, obviously picking up a license, and they are, take E.T., for example, John Williams. So they'll take John Williams and they'll go into the original recordings and they'll clean them up. And they'll fix them up, and they will produce CDs and LPs of the original movie recording from start to finish in order, so you can listen to exactly what is in the movie. But the CD version I got a few years ago had, as I said, had the original LP as well. And I just have to say, like, both of them CDs are phenomenal. Even the re-recording I mean, I got goosebumps listening to that album. And I haven't listened to it enough. I need to go back and listen to it again.
Yeah, it's tough because I want to go back and always, I don't know which one did it, but somebody released a record of the Terminator score and it was red. Everything was red and I wanted it, but I don't collect those at the moment, but I would love to one day get that because they say that is also the best way to get the clearest sound. A lot like film, that's the purest way.
Yeah, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because I will pick up, if I see a CD of one of my favorite scores, I will pick it up, and they're getting more and more expensive. It's not even so much now because a lot of these companies are in the States. I think one of the companies, the one I couldn't say the name of, they have a UK store, so that's not too bad. But Entrada and La La Land have their stores, I think, in the States, and the shipping costs almost as much as the CD itself. So it can be very costly. Do you know what I mean? So I just try and pick up my favorites. Do you know what I mean? If I see something that I really, really want, I'll pick that up. And that's what I'll get. I wouldn't want to go down the rabbit hole of buying LPs when I've got all these CDs. And to be fair, I did collect the original Jaws LPs. Jaws 1, Jaws 2, Jaws 3. There's no Jaws the Revenge. And then as I say, Entrada brought out a special edition of Jaws double LP with new artwork and stuff, and that's the only other one I have. And I wouldn't pick anything else up unless maybe they've done Jaws 2 or something like that.
That makes sense. Get all your favorites, and obviously the Jaws are your favorites. I assume you'll be getting Jaws 3 and 4 on 4K. They announced it today, actually, July 23rd.
Oh, did that? I was actually thinking about that yesterday, John, because I was thinking to myself, I hope that wasn't a rumor because there hasn't been an official announcement of when it's coming out. And then I thought to myself, they'll probably announce it in June.
Nope, they announced it today, just after Memorial Day weekend here in the U.S., like before 4th of July. That in-between stage, they're getting everyone ready for the 23rd. And they kept that rumored artwork is what it is. So you'll be happy. It'll look good on the shelf.
Oh, you know what? I need to go on and see if HMV are doing like an exclusive like they done with the Jaws 2 last year. Do you remember it came with it's a steel book and there was a wee booklet and all with it and a poster?
I hope they do that just for your sake, but I don't know. 3 and 4 don't get the same love as 1 and 2.
You won't be picking that one up then, John?
No, I'll be picking them up because we're going to do a podcast on them. I'm going to grab them both.
Yeah.
I won't grab that collector's edition. Absolutely not. I'll get the bare bones edition.
That's what I mean. You won't be doing the HMV kind of exclusive version.
Oh, no. That only gets reserved for special movies.
Yeah, they are special to me. Special to me.
Uh-huh. I hope they have 3D glasses at least for 3.
Well, the Blu-ray they released a few years ago, it had the 3D version on there. But obviously you had to have a 3D TV and stuff like that. So I have the 3D version, but I've never watched it.
Yeah, I've only seen it back when they used to release it with them. You could use those red and blue glasses and get kind of an effect.
Yeah, I think that's how it was obviously in the cinema back in the early 80s, but now it's a wee bit different. Listen, see, by all accounts, I wasn't impressed by that Blu-ray of Jaws 3D. But by all accounts, the 3D version was outstanding.
Well, maybe they'll bring that up. They haven't announced any of the specs or anything. They just confirmed that it's coming on July 23rd, so they'll have a little time before we find out what's exactly in there. Well,
all I hope for is Jaws the Revenge is that they do branching for the ending so that you can watch the original ending without having to come out of it and then put it on.
Well, hopefully they do that. Listen to the fans. So what's your number 4 then? You got mine.
Here's my number 4. Can you guess?
Oh, I can't really get a good look at that. That looks like an Indiana Jones hat from here and a whip. So which one is it though? Which one is your favorite of them?
Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I think we may. I know. Do you know what? This was so difficult. I mean, I was sitting down and I was like, okay, I know my top 3. Is this too obvious? And then I thought to myself, but no, I'm not saying that these movie scores are actually the best of all time. These are just my favorite movie scores. And then when I did sit down and I thought to myself, well, I'm definitely going to pick these top 3. These are my top 3. And that's just the way it is. And they've been my top 3 for decades now. And I can just throw these albums on and listen to them again and again and again. So the next question was, what's 4 and what's 5? And there's an awful lot of soundtracks there for me that are interchangeable. It was really hard to pick a 4 and a 5. And when I sat down and started thinking about it, I was like, well, what else do I really listen to? And Temple of Doom was one of them ones that I would listen to again and again and again. Now, as I said about E.T., it could be John Williams' best score. I don't believe that Temple of Doom is Williams' best or even his second best, right? Or third, or maybe even not even be his third best. But it's one of them ones that I revisit all the time.
I totally get that. I know how much you love Temple of Doom, which just celebrated an anniversary.
Yeah.
Which is 40 years, if you can believe that one. Which
it's crazy.
Yeah, maybe, and honestly, put me right in the mood to start watching Indiana Jones again, which I've already watched twice in like the last year. So I don't know. I need a break, I guess, but I want to watch them.
Yeah, they're so good. The thing about this score for me, John, is that the first one obviously is the iconic Indiana Jones score, and it does have a really nice theme in the first one, the Marion theme, and it has the Marion love theme, and then it also has the theme for the Ark. But I just find as if this score here just has so many different themes and variations going on. It just hits me more emotionally, and John Williams just puts them all in one big melting pot and just serves up this absolutely outstanding score. Like, it starts off more vintage. It's vintage John Williams. First load of tracks, obviously, it starts with anything goes. Anything goes. Jazz hands, and but then Jaws hands. No, but then it goes into just vintage John Williams. It could be out of Star Wars. I've heard I've listened to his scores for the Star Wars prequels, and they sound very much like the start of Temple of Doom, right? But it's when they actually hit India, when they hit India, that is when this score really shines. You have, for example, you have the Indy theme returns. You have Short Round's theme, which is absolutely amazing. That scene in when they're on the elephants and they're just going cruising past. The scenery, and that theme's playing. But then you also have Willie Scott's theme, which I really like as well. But you also have a theme here. It's called Slave Children's Crusade. That's played throughout it. And if you go back and watch the movie again, for me, out of all the Indiana Jones movies, there's nothing more epic when this music starts. And you see those slave children digging for the rocks, and one of them gets whipped over, and the guard they're pushing the cart with the light. Remember, with all the rocks in the back. And I think when the guard picks one of the kids up, he looks up, and the camera pans up, and there's a silhouette of Indy standing there with a hat and the whip, and he's got this scowl on his face, and he just knocks your man out. And then they free the children. That tune is outstanding. And then you have the Temple of Doom theme. So he has all these themes just mixed together, and they play throughout the movie. And it's amazing. I never get tired of actually listening to that score.
I knew it. I mean, I had a feeling this was gonna be a list, but you're completely right. And it is a great. And you just sold me on watching Temple of Doom again. No, it's a fantastic score. And you came here with much more notes than I did. I mean, I couldn't give you all those exact titles of even my favorite ones. It's obviously some of the big themes, but knowing it's like the fourth to fifth track down. So yeah, you put me to shame here.
Yeah, listen, I'll say a lot of the time, man. You're doing an awful lot for the channel. I just sat down a day and I was like, I had to get notes down because I was like, I feel as if I work better sometimes when I have notes, John. And I did write down a load of tracks, which I think that the highlights of the album. Do you know what I mean? Short Round's theme and The Scroll, To Bangkok Palace, The Temple of Doom, Approaching the Stones. When he goes down to lift the stones is unbelievable. And then Short Round escapes and Saving Willie, but the ending to that as well. And when the Indiana Jones theme is slowed down, Short Round gives him his clothes, and he turns out and he says, "Indy, my friend." And he says, "I'm sorry, kid." Because remember, he hits him a backhander, hits Short Round a backhander. He says, "I'm sorry." And he puts Short Round's hat on him. And then he gives Indy his hat and he puts him on, and Willie Scott says, "Let's get out of here." And he says, "Yes, all of us." And that goes into the Slave Children's Crusade. And then, of course, at the end, the Broken Bridge as well, when they're fighting on the bridge. Listen, it is, I never get, as I said, bored or tired of listening to this score. And this is why I had to put it on my top 5.
And I don't blame you. It's a great spot in your top. And I had the same exact issue that you had. Like my top 3, I had cemented, and it was like 4 and 5 is the ones I was like, how do I want to play around with this and play around like where I'm going to put these scores and everything. Like I knew I had a John Williams, but I was like, where am I going to put it? Like, do I want a Hans Zimmer on here? But my top 3 have always been the same, and that's why number 3 I still have Poltergeist. Jerry Goldsmith score, which, for me, Poltergeist is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. But Jerry Goldsmith did the score for this. He also did the score for Gremlins. So he was working, I guess, with, Steven Spielberg a lot at the time. And, which is weird because Spielberg also worked with, John Williams. This guy gets to play with some of the greatest composers ever. But Jerry Goldsmith did Alien, which we were talking about more atmospheric scores, whereas Poltergeist has a combination of creating atmosphere, but it also, what I think with this one is, it makes me feel very emotional and connected to this family, and that's why I think I can just always listen to it. Like I was just literally just listening to it this week in the car while I was driving to it from work.
Yeah, do you know what? When I rediscovered Poltergeist a few years ago again, it's one of them movies, John, that is. We done a podcast on Poltergeist, remember?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed doing that in October, and one of them movies that terrified me as a child. Didn't see it again till it was like late teens, maybe early 20s. It was always in my collection, but the last, I think it was just before I moved house, three years ago, I rediscovered this movie again, and I fell in love with it again. And it's such a great movie, and it's such a wonderful score. And I actually looked into trying to buy the score then when I fell in love with it again, and I couldn't get it because it's been sold out for a long time. People looking crazy money. The best I could do was get Poltergeist 2. But it's done by Goldsmith, and it's an amazing score as well. But yes, the original is the one that I would say, yes, that's the better score.
Yeah, I don't know what instrument that is in the background. I think it's like a flute or something that kind of has playing underneath some of the stuff. And it's just creates this like warm feeling. And it really, and this came out the same, and you're going to see this in my next pick too. But the fact that this came out the same within 2 weeks of E.T., and they're both, feel very similar to each other, which we talked about when we talked about Poltergeist and everything Spielberg was doing. So it's funny that E.T. and Poltergeist had they're very different scores, but
yes,
I still prefer the Poltergeist score to E.T.'s score. I think that the score does a lot of the heavy lifting in this movie. I think Poltergeist is just such a unique movie where it feels like a Spielberg movie with a really dark horror element to it, and then you have this great score underneath. Just love it. I love how Poltergeist and E.T. I always feel like they're just cousins to each other.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's funny you said about Spielberg and just having Jerry Goldsmith do the score for Poltergeist. Is that really funny when you think about it? Like a lot of the movies he produced, Williams didn't do the score for them, like Silvestri and Back to the Future, Dave Grusin and The Goonies. And Jerry Goldsmith with Gremlins and Poltergeist. So I don't know if that's something which Spielberg was kind of like, we can't have my guy for, but it could also be just the directors too, but like, we want to get our own composers.
Yeah, which would make sense. You got to have that combination, but it could also be like you said, like Spielberg being like, he works with me, but then John Williams always goes around and like is working with other people too. John Williams wasn't just locked down to. I mean, look at all he worked with. What's his name? We just talked about a few times. Richard Donner. So it's not like he was just tied down.
Yeah, so I'm just imagining Spielberg saying John Williams is my bitch, okay?
You guys can have everyone else, but you don't touch John.
John Williams sitting in the corner, afraid to say anything. Whatever you say, Stephen. Yeah.
Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah. You know what? It did cross my. I think we mentioned this when we were doing this podcast, but it did cross my mind, John. Like I was gonna kind of like do what you done, like maybe just pick my favorite and pick one from each, but I just couldn't do it. I was just like, nah, I just have to pick. I just have to pick the favorites.
I mean, it's tough though, because like even some of my Hans Zimmer really is one of my favorite composers, and I love like the True Romance, True Romance score. The problem is with that score, and the reason why I can't put it in my top 5. If you've ever seen the movie Badlands, it's the exact same score, and it's very strange. I've never seen anything like that. Like
It's weird.
it's like in a lower, it's in an upper tempo. It's sped up a little bit more, but it's so unique because it sounds like it's played on a xylophone, so it's recognizable. But I don't know how that happens. I'm sure it's known. There's a reason for it, but I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, me being a John Williams fan, and even Jerry Goldsmith, I'm starting to get more and more into Jerry Goldsmith the older I get, because I'll be honest, I haven't listened to much Williams newer stuff because, again, it's probably because I haven't, like, Harry Potter and things like that. I haven't watched Harry Potter and anything like that. So, and even a lot of Spielberg's recent movies I haven't seen. I also think that John Williams has kind of moved away from. He still does the orchestral scores, but he's moved away from the big themes underplayed. But listening to a lot of his scores, you can notice similarities in the scores. Certain things you go, it sounds like this or it sounds like that. Same with Jerry Goldsmith. I notice certain things in some of his scores. He done Psycho 2. I can tell it's Jerry Goldsmith.
I think with all the great ones, you can tell the similarities. They like to rely on certain things. Another one, I don't know if you know him, Philip Glass. Every time I hear Philip Glass, I always know it's him because of the violin or the orchestra. I always know. Same thing with Danny Elfman. It's a Danny Elfman score.
Yeah. Of course. Look, I there's nothing wrong with having an identity, but like you say, it's. There's a fine name between having an identity and just doing the same thing. And I'm not saying that these guys do the same thing. These guys have an identity. The guy put on Scrooged, and right away it's like, oh, Danny Elfman. and it's not Tim Burton, because when you get Tim Burton, you think, oh, it's going to be Danny Elfman. But you put on Scrooged, and it's not. It's Richard Donner, funny enough, and there's Danny Elfman doing the score. But it's funny you said. I actually heard this. I was listening to a podcast, the likes of Halloween H2O. I think that's the only Halloween movie that actually has an orchestral score, and there's music from Scream in it, literally taken from Scream in that movie. I think it's the same composer.
There's a lot of similarities between Scream and H2O. Kevin Williams wrote both movies, which is weird. They came out a couple years apart. I think they're both Dimension films too. So there's a lot taken from that, and they wanted H2O to feel like Scream, just like they were ripping each other. That's why I have a hard time. Like, Scream is the best of that era. I know this is off topic, but everything that came after Scream, like I Know What You Did Last Summer and all those like kind of teen movies at that time, I just have a hard time with that whole generation. I think a lot of it's the clothes, the cinematography. I don't run back to it.
Yeah, look, I'd be the same. I don't think I was watching as much. I think the thing is that I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't as watching as much 80s horror in the 90s or late 90s, right? Even though I kind of, I lived through it. And then when the 90s came along and Scream came along, I wasn't running out looking for the next Scream. I loved Scream. I wasn't running out wanting to watch I Know What You Did Last Summer or Urban Legend or Halloween H2O. I watched Halloween H2O on Sky Movies when it came out to Sky Movies. I didn't run to the cinema to see it. And I think when I started to really get into horror, I was going back and watching the 70s and 80s horror, not really even the 90s.
The 90s has a few gems in there, and Scream is one of them. But
yes,
for the most part, I don't think it's as memorable as the 70s, 80s. I think you actually have to struggle to pick. I think it got a resurgence, actually, horror in like the 2000s. But the 90s, I do think, is a downtime for horror. They were really picking apart. They were really just picking apart what we had in the 80s, like just poking at it and bringing it up and trying to be meta.
But that's exactly what I was going to say there. And I think the problem there, John, was that, look, I love Scream. I think it's one of the smartest horror movies ever made. When you look at Wes Craven, he reinvented horror on 3 separate occasions, 3 separate decades. That's unbelievable. And he done it with Scream. And after that, all the horror movies wanted to be Scream, to the point where it was too much. Like the Scream sequels, the way I feel about the Scream sequels, it's too much.
I agree. That's why a lot of people get on me, because a lot of people will say that Scream 2 is like the second best Scream. I'm like, it's Scream again. I don't know. I don't love Scream 2.
The thing I know we're moving off a wee bit topic here, but the thing about Scream 2 for me is that it's serviceable. It's after that, the third became Scooby-Doo. And then the fourth was okay, but I just didn't like the fifth at all. But as I say, I think that's the issue with the horror in the late 90s, was that they were all just trying to be Scream. There was nobody out there trying to do something different. There was just like, that's Tyson, kind of like what the slashers done in the 80s, only there was more of them. It was kind of like, all these cheap slashers. It was kind of like, let's Tyson and what Halloween done.
The only thing was with the 80s is that you cannot sell it short, is that there was a lot of cocaine going around in the 80s. So they took that slasher genre and they tried to do something ridiculous and over the top with it that we kind of bought into some stuff.
Yeah, look, the thing is about I think what actually happened was, this is just my opinion, was that a lot of those you like Friday the 13th, you could make such a low budget movie and get big profit back, but there was kind of like independent studios was doing it, and then selling the rights, distribution rights, and making a fortune. And I could understand why they were doing it. But you also had movies like in the 80s, like The Thing came out. You also had Nightmare on Elm Street. You did have some really top horror coming out, but what happened that I felt happened in the late 90s was that actual studios looked at Scream and went, "We're going to make one of them." Yeah, and they kind of took themselves too serious, and it just didn't work for me.
You're right. There was no actual creative minds. Like the studios in the 80s just let them go out and make movies. They gave them money and said, "Go make your movie," and they didn't really care because it didn't cost a lot. Whereas in the 90s, they were just like, "We want," like you said, "we want our own Scream," and they're picking and poking at it, and you got producers bringing all their notes instead of letting somebody make a movie.
Yeah, and I think as well in the early 80s with the horror and the slasher genre, it was kind of like they were kind of pushing boundaries about what you could show and what you couldn't show, and that's why some of these films were banned. And now they're coming back. Well, say coming back now. That some of them were banned, but like they're being places like RO Video are picking them up, and people like me are now watching them who never got to see them in the 80s or the 90s, and it's kind of like they're fun. The special effects. It's the special effect, but it's just fun. Like I've watched other ones called like The Mutilator and Blood Rage and ones like that.
Yeah.
They're fun.
Chopping Mall is ridiculous, but I love it.
Yeah, that's right. I think I've seen that one as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? Circling back, what's your number 3?
What is my number 3? Yes, number 3. I've got them here, so I'll just pop it up on the screen so the audience can see.
Oh, Psycho! How could it not be?
It has to be Psycho. And do you know what? It's not even that. I've got a few wee notes here. It's not even that. People would say it's not an overly, what could I say, joyous listening experience listening to Psycho, but this is an absolute masterpiece. You have to listen to this from start to finish. And one thing that I noticed, I was re-listening to it today, just taking a few wee notes, and I've noticed that Bernard Herrmann, who scored an awful lot of Alfred Hitchcock movies, he has several different themes running through this movie at different points, but in different variations, maybe different speeds, maybe different, loudness and things like that. And as I say, he created a score just using strings. He didn't use brass. He didn't use anything like that, any percussion or anything. And this whole idea of just using strings throughout this movie, it just created a sense of dread and sorrow and suspense throughout the whole movie. And of course, you've got the iconic shower scene in there as well. So this score is a perfect example of a score enhances a movie experience.
No, you're not wrong at all. It really is. And the shower scenes, that piece of music is so iconic. It's tied up right into the scene that people might forget that, you get that, the loud screeching, which I don't know what instrument in the orchestra that was done by, but you get that. And then when the blood's going down the drain, it's such a low octave now, going from high to low. It's just done so well. And yeah, that's something that's very different from a lot of other people, just to use strings, where we are so used to like John Williams using the big horns, or other people using big horns, and then Carpenter's stuff using like synthesizers, just using the orchestra. It's a beautiful thing.
Well, yeah. And look, I don't know if it had been done before. I don't know if it's been done since, but it was almost like experimental. When you think about what Hitchcock was doing with Psycho, it was all experimental. And this was another experiment. And I can't remember if when he told Hitchcock was a wee bit kind of, are you sure it's going to work? I'm not sure what kind of relationship he had with Bernard Herrmann, but I do know that Hitchcock didn't want music in the shower scene.
Really?
Yeah, he wanted it silent. He just wanted the sound of the knife plunging in and the screams. And Herrmann seen it and said, no, you need music in here. And he brought him the shower scene music, which is actually called The Murder. And it's violins. And then obviously at the end, it's a cello. Yeah, but look, everybody knows the shower scene music. Everybody knows the screeching sound and all of Psycho, but it's kind of like, one of the ones we'll talk about later. That's what it's known for. But this score is so much more than that. It is so much more. You've got a love theme here as well with Marion and Sam, which is at the start of the movie. It doesn't come back again, and then you've got all this other kind of music creating suspense and dread throughout the movie. I mean, some of the ones I like here is like the stairs, when Arbogast is going up the stairs, and then he's killed. The car, when he moves the car after moving Janet Leigh's body from the
it's gonna sink
hotel, and then what was the other one here I was gonna talk about as well? Now there's one here throughout the score. It's called the Madhouse. Okay, and it's when he's actually speaking to Marion Crane in the parlor at the back, and she says about putting mother someplace, and you hear these 3 notes, right? Now them 3 notes.
A madhouse?
Are heard again throughout the movie in a different variation with different background type of music mixed in. And it just dawned on me that every time that you see Norman, not every time you see Norman or Mother, but it's kind of like giving you a clue, this person's mad, you know what I mean? And it's used in the finale as well, at the very end where he says, I wouldn't even harm a fly. But those 3 notes that are played, if you listen to the start of Madhouse, the track is called, the temp score for Star Wars used that when Han Solo and who else was it? Was it Luke, Han, Chewie, and Obi-Wan Kenobi? No, Obi-Wan Kenobi. They were hiding. Remember when they landed the spaceship? What do you call it? Millennium Falcon inside the Death Star.
Yeah.
And they hid under the cargo hatch.
Mm-hmm.
And the stormtroopers come on and take a look for them, can't find them. Yeah. And then they push the hatch open. And then you hear them 3 notes. That is the notes from Psycho, because they used it as a temp track in that movie. And when John Williams seen the temp track, he decided to keep it in his Star Wars score as a tribute to his friend, Bernard Herrmann.
See, that's awesome. I love that.
And the funny thing is, and probably not a lot of people really know that unless like you're a big Star Wars fan or something, but another funny thing is too, and I've never heard this mentioned anywhere, there's music at the end, which isn't one of my favorite pieces, but it's part of the score. It's actually called here, what is it called? The Cellar. And it's when it's after was it John Lee's sister? I can't remember the actress's name now, but Norman's coming up to the house and she's up and she's kind of discovered Norman's room and Mother's room, and she runs down and she's about to go into the cellar, and Norman comes up the steps and she's hiding, and there's music in that scene. It just reminds me of the shark attack cage in Jaws, and I just think it's Williams again playing homage to Herrmann, and just saying these 2 score. I think in my mind, saying these 2 scores share some kind of kinship here.
I could see that. I definitely know that John Williams was inspired by Bernard Herrmann. And it's funny because then John Williams starts inspiring new composers today, that when Rogue One came around in the Star Wars franchise, John Williams couldn't do it. I don't remember if he was sick or there was some reason he couldn't do it. He was supposed to. But the guy they brought in to do it, his score sounds like a John Williams score. So you could just clearly tell that he took inspiration from what he was doing, which we've seen in other movies in the past where it sounds like we've said here on this channel about how certain scores sound inspired by John Williams, especially in with Spielberg films that he's produced.
Yeah, 100%. And listen, I have no doubt that Bernard Herrmann inspired a generation. I'm near certain that John Williams worked with him or worked for him at one stage. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he did. But they were friends. And Bernard Herrmann inspired a lot of filmmakers and a lot of composers. And I love a lot of his scores. Well, I love a lot of his scores. I don't have a lot of his scores. I think he's well known for Vertigo, which is another amazing score from Bernard Herrmann. But when I say I love a lot of them, it's like when you watch maybe a Hitchcock movie and he's doing the score, Family Plot. Or no, John Williams, sorry. Did John Williams do Family Plot? I'm getting mixed up here. It might have been Marnie or something I'm thinking of. But he's done a lot of other ones, and he was one of the best composers of all time.
And I completely agree. And that's going to bring us to my number 2, which for the 3rd one in a row, this one's going to, I don't know if this is a little bit surprising or not, but my other favorite score, my number 2 of all time, is from Blade Runner. Also came out in June 1982. It's my 3rd score in a row for movies that came out in June of 1982, which is insane. I know that. How is that even possible? But I love this score. It's by a guy named Vangelis who recently passed away pretty recently. And it's for the movie Blade Runner, which I know you're not a big fan of, but this is a score that every time I listen to it, I get immediately transported back to this world. Like, that's the thing, is like, I love the movie Blade Runner. So of course I love the score. And the score starts right away in the opening credits of this movie when we're just entering into the world. You know, you see the eye, the flames, and this atmospheric score, synthesizer heavy score is playing underneath almost the entire film. And I don't know, it just takes me back to like what I imagine the 1980s future would feel like we were talking about with the Terminator in our last episode.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know, I seen Blade Runner, was it last year or the year before, and I wasn't too fussed on it. So the score is something which is eluding me, but I do know that a lot of people, I've heard that name mentioned. Did he not do one for Platoon?
He might have done Platoon. He definitely did a bunch of other stuff, a lot of other stuff. Evangelist. I've never really he didn't do a lot of stuff that I really watched. I definitely did Platoon.
Yeah,
he wasn't like my guy, like other than like he's not done so many great scores. A lot like Brad Fiedel, where he's tied really to a couple of movies, and that's like it. It's not like one of these other composers, which always fascinates me with some of the greats is how many they can do. Like John Williams doing score after score after score. It's so many of them. It's the same thing with Hans Zimmer, where it's just like, oh, he did this score, and Adam Silvestri. It's incredible how many scores they can pump out.
Yeah, John Williams is still going. He's in his 90s.
94 years old.
It's crazy, you know. Yeah, the volume of it. I mean, to me, these guys are geniuses, you know, to be able to create music like that. And as you say it, and continue to do it.
It's unbelievable. It's the one thing of filmmaking I can't wrap my head around it, because you have to have a full understanding of music. And how many people who are great composers want to go into the film field? Do they want to like become these great, directors of these big orchestras? Something I kind of learned a little bit about watching that movie that came out last year, Maestro. It's like, he did Leonard Bernstein. He did the score for West Side Story, but he's mostly known for the other side, Broadway. And like, what makes these composers decide I want to do film scores?
Yeah, you know what? I think I say I've never, as much as I love the music, I've never really looked into the background of composers, even my favorite composers, but I've seen them interviewed on special features and on YouTube and things like that over the years. Danny Elfman, I say John Williams, love listening to John Williams and even Danny Elfman, even old archival interviews with Jerry Goldsmith. And I think certain ones fall into it by accident. I know Danny Elfman was in a band.
Yeah, Danny Elfman, he's actually had success. He
was a successful band, and he done songs. He was doing so. Like he does a song for Ghostbusters too, and he done. He done Weird Science. Yeah, I couldn't believe it when I watched Weird Science recently, because I hadn't seen Weird Science in years and watched it a few years ago. And was like, that's Danny Elfman does the song. It's class. It's a really good song. So. Yeah. I think possibly maybe the money was the lure as well to the composing, because guys worth a fortune now.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. I've always wondered how these guys fall into that. It's almost like being a specialist and a doctor, where you got to learn this field and then you end up at like doing this. Like all of a sudden, like I'm always wondering how you went through the whole process of learning to become a doctor, then you end up becoming a foot doctor or something. It's like, where are these guys who learned? Because like you had to learn how to be a musician first, then to control an entire like orchestra like that. Some people obviously like Brad Fiedel, it's more synth heavy, but how do you get hooked up into the movie business? Like this is a whole different lane.
Yeah, and the thing is about, I know that Spielberg was actually, I think he's supposed to be doing a documentary on John Williams, and I said I don't know much about his life, but I think a guy at his age, he was around in the what is he about? Did you say 94? So he was born in 1930? Right?
Yeah, that would be 1930.
Yeah, so he came along in the, say, late 40s, early 50s when he was playing his music. And I think somebody like him, as I said about falling into it, he probably just wanted firstly to be a musician. I think he played clubs and stuff like that. I think he was in a jazz band, and then maybe he gets a gig working for this one. And then somebody said, and then don't work your way up. It's kind of like, and then somebody says, eventually says, well, I want to hire you to actually write a full score. I know that John Williams' first Oscar was for Fiddler on the Roof, and it was just for arranging the score. So I'm not sure what that means exactly. So it wasn't new music. Did he rewrite it and rearrange it and score it, and then he gets an Oscar for it? Do you know what I mean? Because Jaws was his first original Oscar, because he wrote original music. So I think from John Williams' point of view, that's probably how he kind of fell into it. But in today's society, yeah, is it a case of being like, I want to do film scores? But I would say anybody who's musically talented like that, John, who just comes from a musical background, probably doesn't just put their egg in one basket.
Yeah, I guess that's how you have to like really end up. It's always fascinating. That's one thing we talk about a lot is how a film gets made. There's just so many different levels, and I'm always fascinated how people get to that point. Like, I was watching an extra today. It's a little bit not about scores or anything, but I was watching an extra today for the first Bad Boys movie, and they were talking about the guy who brings in all the fake guns for the movie and brings it to them and everything like that. And that he owns a business of owning the guns. He's like, I outsourced the guns to them, and he's like, yeah, I got started in practical effects, and then I opened this. And this is what I do now. And it's like, what a trajectory for these guys' careers. Yeah. So it's always fascinating to me to see where they start and how you end up, because the movie business, I don't think you get started like, I'm going to have this eventually.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is like that. I think there's very few who'd say that's exactly what I want to do or where I'm going to be. But I mean, you take James Cameron for an example. We've done the Terminator in our last podcast. He started off, he was a truck driver, and what inspired him was Star Wars. That was the movie that inspired him to go into movie making. He quit his truck driving job, and but he didn't walk in and say, right, I want to be a director. I think he actually went himself and studied himself on how to be a director, rather than go to film school. However, he went down the road of, because he was a very good artist, of getting his foot through the door by helping out the. He wasn't originally an art director. He went in through, I think it was Roger Corman, wasn't it? But he was helping the art team. And then what happened was an art director fell out of a project, and somebody says, Jim will do it. And he went, yeah, I'll do it. And that's it. That's how he kind of progressed. So I don't know.
Make it kind of deal.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, like, we didn't mention it last week in the Terminator pod. When you look at what he done to get that gig on the Terminator, he sold the rights to the Terminator to get the directing deal.
$1.
for $1, exactly. So the same as Stallone in Rocky. He basically said, I'll only sell the rights if I can act in it. So I don't know if it work in today's film industry, but like we were saying, there are some of these composers, I think they've got musical backgrounds, they're in bands, they're going around clubs, or they're doing other things, and they kind of gradually move into that. Maybe they don't know they'd be any good at doing film scores until somebody says, listen, we want you to score this movie. Look at George Harrison for Live and Let Die. Or not George Harrison, sorry, he was one of the Beatles. George Martin.
Yeah.
George. Mm-hmm.
Paul McCartney did Live and Let Die, and all that. And then, but another one that's recent, I don't know. I know you don't watch as many new movies, but somebody who's really big right now is Trent Reznor, and he was from the band Tool.
Right.
This guy, Tool. Like, I wouldn't expect this guy to be scoring the movie Soul, a Pixar movie. So maybe that's somebody who's interested in movies, as we eventually wanted to do scores, but it's like I lucked into being in this famous rock band, and now I'm going to use my talent somewhere else. It's always fascinating how it happens.
Yeah, and look at Nick Cave.
Yeah.
Yeah, he scored Jesse James. I actually really love that score. He scored that. Yeah, it's a great movie as well. I really enjoy that film.
Yeah, no, that is a great movie. It's awesome. And you know what? We've gone on. I feel like we get sidetracked. What's your number 2?
Yes, my number 2. I'm just letting you lead the way whenever we get the next one straight. Okay, I'll just pop this up here. My number 2 is.
You know what? That's my number 1, and I feel like we've been kind of walking around this one the entire podcast.
Exactly. We've been dancing about it, touched on it a wee bit, but that's the expanded version. That's not the version from earlier, just so you know, as I say. But yeah, what can I say, John, about this score? I think people know we are big fans of this score. I kind of guessed that was your number 1. I think you told me that before. But yeah, for me, I named this when I was writing my notes, Elfman's Gothic masterpiece. Okay, and I wrote, and as I said, started to write out like standout tracks, and then I was just like, I got to like halfway through and just wrote every single track from the rest of the album down, and just said, look, every part of this album is brilliant, start to finish, everything in between. It's gothic, it's mysterious, it's exciting, scary, with clownish overtones, and includes superhero and gangster themes, and a love theme by Prince's father. Did you know that?
I didn't know that, but that's incredible.
Yep. So the love theme in this movie is Scandalous, which is the Prince song, but that was composed by Prince's dad. And for me, I've written here and here as well, it's rightfully up there with the Superman theme from 1978.
Yeah, the Batman theme is iconic. And I mean, it did more than just become iconic from this movie. It inspired the Batman the animated series, which is
yes,
that for years people would hear like Danny Elfman tracks that were essentially coming from this version, because you pointed out that the Elfman score for Batman Returns sounds more like a Danny Elfman score, like you're hearing, whereas this one sounds like unique to itself. And I think that's why I this week, because you said that, I rewatched Batman and Batman Returns back to back to see if I can hear like, and you're 100% correct. And I think now I kind of understand a little bit more of that, because Batman 89, it's a lot more of a studio movie than we kind of realize or give it a little bit of credit for, where he gets more of a leash with Batman Returns. And then they took it right back because they said it was too dark and they couldn't sell Happy Meals. But
yeah,
the original one is so good.
It is. Look, as I said, this goes back to the start of the podcast. It was like when I started getting into movie music, and it was an embarrassing thing to kind of do back then. Where I was from, nobody was listening to movie music. You know, you would admit to that. Everybody in the 90s was into bloody, Britpop or Nirvana or grunge or like dance music and things like that in the 90s. I wasn't really into pop music then. I only started getting into pop music when I was a bit older. But so I used to listen to these soundtracks all the time, and Batman was one of them. I used to go to bed at night and put my earphones in. I had big earphones like this, and put the CD on and lie in bed listening to this soundtrack. From start to finish, it's absolutely amazing. Every single track is outstanding. And I believe that Elfman was on set in London, because I don't think we really touched much on the score or the Prince music when we done our podcast. I can't remember. I don't think we touched on too much, but he was on set in London, and it says he got his inspirations from walking about the set at night time on the backlot of Pinewood. Now, we all know that was built outside, and I think that's the reason for the differences between this one and Batman Returns as well. I also think that because of looking up into the night sky and stuff like that, it didn't lend itself to have that more kind of fantastical kind of signature Danny Elfman theme that he has with snow and Christmas and bells ringing and all that. This for me is why I think it's his best score, because it is a wee bit different than everything else he's ever done.
Yeah, I mean, he was working with Tim Burton around this time. Like before this, they obviously worked together on Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Then they did Beetlejuice. And then after this, they did Edward Scissorhands. And Edward Scissorhands sounds very similar to the Beetlejuice score. So, and other things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole thing was that you'd said earlier about, it's just strange for that time to have two concept albums. Well, the thing was that Warner Brothers had Prince, and I think he had another album. I've contracted to do another album with him, and they had done Purple Rain, and they wanted Prince to do the music. And then it was actually, I think it was Tim Burton said, well, I want Danny Elfman to do music, and they asked Danny Elfman to work with Prince, and Danny Elfman walked out, point blank refused. And it wasn't so much that he didn't like Prince. He says he loved Prince. He was a fan of Prince. He felt as if he wouldn't have the creative control that he wanted. So they came to... And he's 100% right. He came to a compromise that he would do the score and Prince would do songs. And that is also probably why you have the Scandalous theme in the score.
That does make sense, I guess, if I kind of come to some sort of agreement. It's just that Prince is somebody who's a control freak as well, and he's not going to, Prince will overwhelm it. Like, one thing about Prince is one of my favorite musical artists of all time. His first album, he played every single instrument on it.
I know he's self-taught. It's like 17 instruments on his original album. Yeah, and look, I love Purple Rain as well. Love the movie, love the songs, even though the movie's really cheesy. But I love.
But I do. Yeah. But the music is so good, and that's what you're there for.
Yeah, see when you watch that movie, it's when the songs aren't playing, you're going, this is bad, and then a song comes on and you go, this is really good. So it's up and down. Look, I that's probably my favorite album of all time is Purple Rain album.
I love it too. And 1984, what a year.
Another great year, exactly. And as I say, so that's how they ended up. If you look at a lot of the soundtracks in the 80s, John, the likes of say Top Gun, that had a great score by what do you call him? He done Beverly Hills Cop as well.
Yeah, what's his name? He does a great job. I love that. Yeah,
Harold,
Something.
Harold something or other. I can't think of his name. I do know his name, just out of my head. But when they released them albums, he had songs to it, and then they threw in part of the score. And I think maybe that was their original idea for Batman. But then when they heard actually Elfman's music, they thought it was outstanding. So that's how we end up with a full orchestral, theatrical score. It's very theatrical, and then you've got your Prince songs. But to me, the Prince songs just fit Gotham perfectly, and the Joker.
I could not imagine certain scenes without, like, it's amazing how much certain scenes from the movie are burned into my head. When he walks into the museum and he's like, "Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds," I just hear from the soundtrack in my head now. So I can't honestly separate the two. Like, it's incredible. That's just how many times I've seen Batman and heard the score and heard the soundtrack.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that go, "Oh, the songs are rubbish. The songs dated." It made its own world, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I understand where they're coming from. Maybe in an ideal world there shouldn't have been no songs in it. But listen, who doesn't love Trust? Oh, what a tune!
Trust, who do you trust? What makes you
Trust in him coming around the corner on the float for the 200 on it, and him in that suit, it wouldn't work any other way.
No, and throwing the money out.
Yeah.
And the way the lyrics are, who you gonna trust? The way he comes up and he goes, "Hubba hubba hubba, money money money, who you gonna trust?" Yeah. But that's great how that's still intermixed with the Danny Elfman score, because that listen, the whole everything from start to finish, it's outstanding. I can't turn around and say, this was a good track and that's a good track. No, every single track's amazing. For each scene it's in, but of course, Descent and the Mystery has to be my absolute favorite.
Yeah, it's hard for me to pick a favorite on there, but that's up there for me. I mean, I just, the opening credits, it's iconic to me. Just hearing the entire first track, you get transported into that world, and I'll never forget. We talked about it last year, and we did it. And you sent me the picture of the kid who broke into the studio just to take a picture with that Batman logo. It's incredible to me that that's all it is, because they've got the camera just so close, and they have the theme playing over it with those yellow opening credits. Like, I'm immediately into the world. Then that's something that's incredible. That's all combined of just simple things.
Yeah, I mean, just for me, what you're saying there, just to start with the Warner Brothers logo turning the night sky.
Yeah.
And then you hear the and then as the camera pans down, and then you hear the wee xylophone ding 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 ding, and it's Jack Nicholson right away, goosebumps, nostalgia. Do you know what I mean? And the theme to me is just, it's more bassy than the second movie. I think I'd mentioned that to you, and I think it's more gothic. It's far more gothic than the second movie.
Yeah, a lot of this movie is so gothic. The whole city is gothic, and that's one thing that Gotham City, they nailed with the production design, is how gothic it is, and it matches up so well with the score. And that's why it's my number 2, which means that, and I mean, it's my number 1 and it's your number 2, but I kind of can figure what's your number 1. I'm pretty sure I know.
Yeah. Well, let's just wait and see if you do know what it is. So it is.
Yeah.
I kind of cheated.
Oh, that's fair. That's a fair
I cheated.
Eddie, hurry! Faster! Come on, Sam! Hurry!
I decided that I had to put Jaws and Jaws 2 as my number 1, because these two soundtracks to me just go hand in hand, John. Two kind of we different movies, kind of different scores, but still the familiarity of Jaws. I love both of them. You know what I mean? Listen, I think I've said enough about Jaws. How people, me, know I love Jaws, and they could have guessed it was going to be my number 1. But just like Psycho is a perfect score that enhances that movie, Jaws to me is perfection and enhances that movie no end.
It is a great score, and so is the Jaws 2 score. I listened to them last year when we did our show on the first 2 Jaws movies and how iconic they are. And, one day I really hope to feel what you feel and a lot of other people feel for Jaws, because the score is fantastic and the movies are just so well made. I have to imagine that you feel with Jaws how I feel with Terminator. That's how I imagine you feel when you watch that movie.
Yeah, well, maybe the score, if you listen to the score more, maybe that will make you appreciate the visuals on screen even more. Um, yeah, look, you had mentioned last week in the pod about Terminator being the best opening credits of all time. Well, for me, Jaws is the best opening credits of all time, with that music playing while that shark is swimming through the water. It gets no better than that. It just sets the tone for the whole rest of the movie, and it just draws you right in. And it's no secret that Spielberg has even admitted that he credits John Williams and the Jaws score for being 50% responsible for the success of the film. But look, it's not just a shark theme being played over and over and over again. This movie, like, you know, it has so much in it. It's scary, it's suspenseful, it's dramatic. You know what I mean? There's a swashbuckling adventure scene and haunting horror elements as well. So it's perfection, you know. And then when you get to the Jaws 2, as I say, check my notes here as well. Check my notes here. Just, I mean, there's more underwater scenes in Jaws 2, so it's a wee bit more melodic score, you know, with strings and harps and French horns, and it's more playful and youthful to reflect the teens, but it still has the suspense and the drama and the adventure, the excitement as well. And this is another score. I can't just sit here and pick out, you know, this track or that track or the other track. I just would say to anybody, if you haven't listened to these scores, you're on YouTube, go on and listen to them from start to finish. Listen to them back to back. You will really enjoy them. If you're in the movie scores, you'll absolutely enjoy them.
I agree. And one thing you brought up on our show last year was how John Williams, did he not go back and listen to the original Jaws score to specifically try and make it sound different?
Yeah, you know, I found that very interesting about John Williams, because he talks about on the special features of the Jaws 2 DVD from 2001 or whatever, but it's on the Blu-ray now, about the score. He says he's always got so much work on his desk that he doesn't go back and revisit the score that he just done. And he also went on to say that he felt that the shark theme returning to the movie was important, kind of like a reoccurring character that they used to do in the old serials. And I found that fascinating, because, okay, we're used to that now. We're used to hearing there's a shark, we'll have the Jaws theme. The Terminator, we'll have the Terminator theme. Batman, we'll have the Batman theme. But that wasn't the done thing back then. So he's kind of breaking the mold there, that the shark's back, we're going to have the shark theme. And that's the thing too. He created new themes for Jaws too. And you hear what I call the Orca theme at the start of the movie, which was the theme of the three guys in the original movie. So only time you hear that theme in Jaws 2, he created all new themes for the kids, for Brody, for, you know, the shark attack scenes. I feel as if the shark theme isn't as prominent in this one as it is in the first one. But yeah, I found that fascinating that he would say that about bringing back that. And I have this theory, I've mentioned it before in the pod, that John Williams' sequels are almost as good, if not better, than his originals.
You're not wrong. Like I brought it up earlier, and you know, I'm really glad you made me do it. It was listening to the score for The Lost World and Jaws 2. I really do enjoy the score, and I'm someone like you who could just sit there and just listen to scores. And you know, my wife Faith likes to make fun of me. It's funny how you said, like, people, it was embarrassing to talk about. Faith will make fun of me to this day for listening to scores. Just sit there and listen to the score. I'm like, yeah, I enjoy the score.
Yeah, I do. I'm getting past that embarrassment now. I don't care anymore.
Yeah, I never care. Now at my last job that I quit, I used to just listen to the score out loud on a speaker. I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah, I remember when I was listening to used to listen to through a phase of listening to the Goonies score while in the bath. And my neighbour said to me one day, I met her in the shop one day, and she says to me, all right, David, listening to the Goonies score, were you? But I'm going to have to turn that down. I laughed. I just laughed. I went, yeah, I like listening to it when I'm in the bath. So, but going back, something I wanted to touch on, by the way, before it goes out of my main too, talking about how scores, reoccurring scores, isn't it strange that another two scores that I love, Psycho 2 and Psycho 3, they don't have the Bernard Herrmann score in there, and I thought that was very brave of Jerry Goldsmith. And who was it done the third score? Oh, who done the third score? I actually really love Psycho 3 more than Psycho 2 score. So I do, and it's one of my favourite scores as well. But it's really strange that they just created brand new scores for those movies, and it's just kind of like to suit the images on the screen.
It is very bold when they do that. I don't know who does these scores. We did the research, but I don't know if you've ever seen the Bad Boys movies from the 90s and early 2000s, and then they had another one come out. I love these movies, but one thing I love about the first Bad Boys movie is that the original score is fantastic. And then they
Yeah.
did a whole new score for the second Bad Boys movie and don't even use the Bad Boys theme. And I really don't like that decision at all.
Yeah, so it's brave to kind of do it, but sometimes it doesn't come off.
No, and then when they get to the third movie, they bring back the Bad Boys theme, and they did this with the Terminator franchise. But once we get past Terminator 1 and 2, I hate the score for Terminator 3.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And look, that goes back to what we were saying there about Batman, because look, I think that the Batman Forever score suits that movie, but I remember kind of like hating it when I first seen it. Not hating the score, hating that they didn't use Danny Elfman, and they had the Danny Elfman score in the trailers, and especially. And they even had the cheek to use the Danny Elfman scores, I think, in the Batman and Robin trailers. And I'm sitting going, well, you didn't use it in the last movie. He's not going to use it in this one because he's not doing the score. Do you know what I mean?
And they do this on purpose sometimes. They play around with your expectations. Like, I remember when Terminator Dark Fate was coming out, there was an article I read that said that, we're going to use the original Brad Fidel Terminator score more in this one. And I got really excited. I'm like, we're going to finally hear the Terminator theme again for the first time since, because they in Genesis, they played over Terminator and they changed the score for those scenes. And I hated that decision too. But I'm like, okay, maybe we're going to use it. They played it once in Dark Fate. Me off.
Yeah, it's just it's nostalgia put on your heartstrings there, John. You know what I mean? For big fans like yourself, that's get you in the cinema. Yeah, got you again. And that's the thing too, like as well. Since I'm talking about the Jaws soundtracks here, like as I actually love the Jaws 3 soundtrack and Jaws the Revenge soundtrack as well. And they weren't done by John Williams, but the thing is that I think it is a general consensus that them scores are very good for them movies, to the point where people actually think the Jaws of Revenge score surpasses the actual movie, which wouldn't be hard.
No, it's not hard. And we'll talk about those this summer. So, good way to start closing out the show is one thing we didn't get to talk too much about. The big part of the show when we first started was talking about James Bond. And I know how much you love those James Bond scores. I thought one might actually make your top 5.
Do you know what? It's really odd. It crossed my mind that we should talk about John Barry when we're doing our pod, and then I forgot about it. So, but yes, I love John Barry. I love his scores. It's just out of top 5 for me. I don't think there's a Bond score that's a top 5 for me. Maybe it's because it's a much of a muchness, if that's the right term to use. Is that he's created some really good scores for each of his movies, but as a consistent listening experience from start to finish, does it merit a top 5 spot for me? Probably not.
Yeah, I noticed when we finished. Now that we finished, both of us had one score from the 60s. I think we both, and then one score from the 60s, and then everything else I had was from the 1980s, and then you had one from the 70s, and then most of the 3 80s scores.
Yeah, what I have again, I had well, if you count Jaws 2 two from the 70s, one from the 60s, 2 from the 70s. Yeah, and the rest is from 1990. Back to Future's 1990. Yeah.
It was recorded in the 80s.
It probably was. It probably was recorded in late 1989 or something. James Bond, John Barry. Do you know what? I was actually going to say to you too. He done a score for a rare of a film called The Deep.
I've heard of The Deep. I think I've seen The Deep now that I think about it, because I was on a list I saw recently. I was like, I remember that movie.
Yeah. Robert Shaw's in it. Peter Bensley wrote the book, and then they made it a few years after Jaws, probably just trying to cash in. And it's actually not a bad film. It's a different concept. It's a completely different concept than Jaws. Like, it's about treasure. It's about, you know what I mean? And this young couple who gets caught up with these gangsters on Bermuda when they were looking for treasure, and it's to do with I think it's opioid, isn't it? Drugs. But John Barry does the score to that movie, and it's outstanding. I love John Barry when he does scores for like aquatic type of films. So when he does the James Bond scores for like the movies that they're underwater and stuff, he does a really good job.
Yeah, he does do great work. It's funny that just our favorites kind of line up with like the 60s, 70s, 80s, kind of like in that area. One slightly in the 90s, but we talked about it. I just felt like in that era, scores were just a big part of the movies. Like when you go back and watch movies from like the 30s and 40s, even 50s, they all sound very similar to each other. There's some standouts, but in the 80s and especially the 80s, I felt like scores just stood out as a big part of the movie. And of course the soundtracks.
Yeah, of course. I think that they were kind of dying out in the early 70s, the big orchestral scores. And to be honest with you, maybe I'm being biased here, but it was Spielberg and Williams brought that back with Jaws. You know, they were the ones that brought that, in my opinion, brought that back. And then the next year you had Rocky. Yeah, but that was a smaller kind of orchestra because that's all they could afford, but very memorable music. And then the following year you had Star Wars, and that was John Williams again. And the reason John Williams done Star Wars was because Spielberg recommended him to Lucas because of Jaws.
That's a big thing we got to definitely give against Spielberg, just giving him all the credit. Yeah, because George Lucas, I feel like I love George Lucas, but a lot of his success, he's got to give a lot of credit to Spielberg for helping him out, I feel like.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And he was the only one who had faith in Star Wars. Whenever all his mates were saying this film's rubbish, he was the one who said, "No, it's going to do well." But that, as you say, that then moves into late 70s, Superman again, Williams. But you've got Alien, these scores, and you move into the 80s. And then what happens with the 80s? With the MTV comes along, you then have the concept of songs to accompany your movie.
Good music video. We had to have Kenny Loggins. That's how Kenny Loggins got a career.
yeah, exactly. Probably after like Footloose and Flashdance, and then like I love the Top Gun soundtrack. It's brilliant.
Oh, I love Top Gun. I love the score and the soundtrack to that movie. I mean, it's perfect. Danger Zone, and of course, Playing with the Boys. We got to do Top Gun one day.
Yeah, definitely. I love the song Destination Unknown.
Yeah, it's a cheesy 80s action movie, but I love it. I love every second.
Yeah. It's class. It is really good. I rediscovered Top Gun a few years ago. It was a type of movie that was on in the 80s, but I wasn't really interested in it because it was like had this love kind of thing going on, and I never properly watched it till about 5-6 years ago, and absolutely loved it. Thought it was brilliant. But I agree, the score as well helped that, and the songs as well. When you had all those ones coming out in the 80s, John, like Dirty Dancing and. Even Ghostbusters had a soundtrack album, and it's some really good songs on it.
Yeah, they were just putting a compose, and I mean, it gets you. Like when you're a kid, especially, like you see the album in the store. I mean, I had Space Jam, I had Batman Forever, like I said. Like these are big, just albums that basically are just mixtapes of like great songs and everything like that.
Yeah, exactly. But what I liked then too as well. But there was some of these artists were creating songs for the albums. It wasn't just like I noticed certain movies would like get the rights to certain songs and put an album together, and it's songs, well-known songs. What I like actually about Tarantino, and we've moved a wee bit away from scoring here, but what I like about Tarantino is that his albums were very successful as well, but he kind of was plucking songs that people had forgot about.
Yeah, he was trying to bring recognition to songs that he liked when he was growing up that he heard like with his parents, which I always loved that about Tarantino. Like, but that's exactly like Kay Billy's songs of the 70s is a big thing of Reservoir Dogs, and then and Pulp Fiction, all this like surfing music he wanted to put in there.
Yeah, and one of my favorite albums of his is Jackie Brown's.
Yeah, Jackie Brown's a classic as well. That's how I found out about what's their names. The same guy finds out about it in the Delphonics. I love it. It's like, like the Delphonics. Jackson says to him.
Yeah, see when I hear that song now, all I think of is Robert Foster driving his car.
He learned it from. I love that. That's now I want to watch Jackie Brown.
But yeah, so that brilliant film, and 110th Street and Strawberry Letter.
Across 110th Street to go over those credits. I think it just her on that like moving thing in the airport.
Yeah, brilliant opening.
But you know what? I think we said a lot about scores, and we've gotten kind of away from to soundtracks. It's a good way to close out the video. Maybe hint at us going what we're going to do for our next episode for this show, because we've been doing it for almost a year. And we're going to do a little bit of an anniversary episode and go back to where it all started with James Bond.
Yep, The Spy Who Loved Me.
Yep. Yeah, because that's where we left off. And one day, maybe the next 3 to 5 years, we'll finish the entire franchise.
we do one a year.
Yeah, right now we're in Roger Moore zone. So
Roger Moore. What is this? Number 8?
I think so.
I think it's number 8, isn't it? I think it is.
Yeah, because we didn't get too far on the Roger Moore.
No, but we done Living That Die, and we done Man with the Golden Gun, obviously, and this is his next one, and I think this is the one that people believe is possibly his signature Bond movie. his best Bond movie. So I'm looking forward to it. I haven't watched The Spy Who Loved Me in a couple of years. So it'll be interesting to see your thoughts, John. You probably haven't seen it in a long time.
Oh my god, it's been forever. But I was enjoying the Roger Moore ones before we stopped. I got to admit, I have watched a couple other Bonds out of sequence since we stopped, just because I wanted to watch them. Like I watched Skyfall, and I watched GoldenEye again.
Well, last month I watched, or maybe about 6 weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago, I watched over a couple of weeks. I watched From Russia with Love and Thunderball.
I know you're a big From Russia with Love guy and Thunderball guy, so I'm not surprised.
Yep. I'm near certain. Did I watch another one? I'm trying to remember. No, I haven't. I think that was the only two I watched.
Robert Shaw's always on your mind.
Well, who is? Oh, Robert Shaw. Oh, yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah, granted, the deep Jaws, From Russia with Love. You know.
Yeah, he's great. Sad. Always makes me sad to realize he died so young.
He died a couple of years after Jaws. Yeah, 1978. Mm-hmm.
In Ireland, right?
Here in Ireland, he had a house out on the west coast, and that's where he died. He died of a heart attack.
That's what gets most men.
It is. I believe that house is still there. I think I don't know. I'm not sure if his family still owns it. And they erected a memorial to him. Have you ever seen a film called The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3?
Love that movie. Also has a good remake.
Yeah. Well, I didn't like the remake, to be honest. I only seen it once, but I love the original. And now you know where Tarantino got Mr. Blue and Mr. Brown and Mr. Green from.
Yeah, that actually has a pretty good 4K from Kino Lorber, the original. The original's much better. I like that one more. I didn't get to review that 4K when it came out on the channel, because you know who really likes that movie is Matt, a fellow George lover like yourself. Also,
well, I have a DVD. I haven't watched it in a long time, so I don't think it's out over here to upgrade. But here, I tell you another one I actually watched a few years ago. It wasn't too bad. Talk about Robert Shaw. If you like Sean Connery, Robin and Marion.
I haven't seen that. Robert and Marion.
Should give that a watch. Robin Hood.
Yeah, I gotta definitely watch that one. Another one of yours that I gotta keep. You recommended me years, and I still haven't watched it. I always have it. Like I'm gonna watch it. I know I should watch it, and it's In the Name of the Father. I still haven't done that one.
Oh yeah, no, you'll love it. I think you'll really like that movie. Since you're a big DDL fan.
Just think he's a great actor.
oh yeah, he's outstanding in this, and his accent isn't bad either.
No, he's the guy's such a method actor. I mean, I'm not surprised. He seems to always nail it.
You can let me know if you think his accent's good, because the character that he's playing, based on a true story, is lived not too far from where I grew up, and I actually and I actually lived down beside where Jerry Conlon lived for 10 years. I owned a house down there. But I live a stone's throw away from where the start of the movie is based.
That's fascinating. Where's Daniel Day-Lewis originally from? I don't really remember. It was like original, where he's originally
from. He was born in London. He's an Englishman, but I believe he's an Irish background. And I did look up about Daniel Day-Lewis. He has Irish citizenship, and I know he's got a house down in the south of Ireland as well, so he resides there a lot of the time. But you had said that, was it yourself said you've seen him he's been in New York, or he's a place in New York as well?
Yeah, he spends a lot of his time in the city right now, and he always see him like walking around in like sweatpants and a sweatshirt. Like he looks old now, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, he must be well in his 60s now.
Yeah, he looks a little bit like you see that a lot. Like I saw a video of Giancarlo Esposito from the Do the Right Thing, and then he got famous for Breaking Bad. I saw him like walking around LA, and he looked old too. And I was like, man, life comes at you fast.
Oh yeah, no. Well, listen, Daniel Day-Lewis is probably starting to actually look like Abraham Lincoln now.
Finally.
No makeup, just pure method. I'm old, and that's it.
Yeah, that's it. I'm just old now. Like he was gonna. I have all this preparation for my wheelchair from my left foot. I'll be all right.
Yeah, it's true.
But I think this is a good place, better than any of the ended. We're at an hour 35. So, anything else you want to add before we close out?
No, I hope everybody enjoyed the show. I've really enjoyed doing this, John. Just I always enjoy doing the movies as well. But it was a nice, just wee bit of a change to shake it up, and maybe it's something we can do.
Yeah, I think we can do more of these. I had fun doing this too.
Every load of months. I kind of feel like I can't believe I've been doing this a year now, and I'm glad you had me on the channel. I appreciate it to do this, because I thoroughly enjoy it. But I feel as if it's like our anniversary episode. We're coming to the end of a season, and then we'll start pick up a new season of movies to do.
Yeah, I
next
think now
load of months.
we actually have some plans now instead of like always like winging it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we're a little more organized. I think everything's coming together. And I think, yeah, especially after a year, I'll throw some clips in for next episode of like where we've come because I do feel like the production's a lot nicer now, and I think it finally is all working out.
yeah. I just need better technology here. One day, one day.
Yeah, but you know what? It still sounds you didn't have a mic when we first started, so that's a big improvement.
That's true. I was just shouting into the microphone.
Yeah, it worked out though.
Yeah, it worked out.
But we'll talk more about our anniversary on next week's episode. So we hope you guys enjoyed the show as much as we have fun making it. So let us know in the comment section. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on, and get out in the street and tell your friends about us. Hey guys, just popping in at the end of the video for this week's digital code giveaway. In every single video that we do here on Friday, I'm going to ask you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. All you have to do is answer one of those questions in the comment section below. As long as you do that, you come back to this Tuesday's video where we'll put your name on a magic wheel. We'll spin that bad boy 2 times. The 2 names it lands on, they have their choice of the digital codes that you've seen on your screen before you today. And since we were just talking about scores, I figured I'd ask you guys, what is your favorite score of all time? And who is your favorite composer of all time? Leave those answers in the comment section below. And while you're down there, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this video, tell your friends about us. And if you want, we even have channel memberships. You can become a friend of the channel. You can even become a channel producer like John Doe Juggalo, Jason Martin, and Mr. Smelly Potato. Or become a channel director like Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews. But if you got no money to throw away, guys, don't worry about it at all. We just appreciate you guys checking out this video. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, get out in those streets and tell your friends about us. And then we'll be seeing you around.